It is January 6th, 2025, and we're going to be studying Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 5, finishing the chapter, text 32 to 57. This is with the Bhakti Vedanta class of the VIHE. Okay, so I'm going to, it's funny, whoever decides what classes we do, some days we just have 6 verses, and like today we have 25. I'm not quite sure what the criteria is, how it's divided. Naisam matis tavad urukramangring, sprisatjanarta pagamo yadarta, mahiya sampada rajo bhishekam, niskinchananam na vrivintayavat. Another very famous verse. Unless they smear upon their bodies, this is Prahlad talking to his father, the dust of the lotus feet of a Vaishnava, completely free from material contamination, persons very much inclined towards materialistic life cannot be attached to the lotus feet of the Lord, who is glorified for his uncommon activities. Only by becoming Krishna conscious and taking shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord, in this way can one be free from material contamination. Ityukvo paratam putram hiranyakashipu rusha andikritatma svotsangam nir askita mahitale. After Prahlad Maharaj had spoken in this way and become silent, Hiranyakashipu, blinded by anger, threw him off his lap and onto the ground. Ahamarsha rusha vishta kasayi bhutalochana vadyatam ashvayam vadyo nisarayatanai. Indignant and angry, his reddish eyes like molten copper, Hiranyakashipu said to his servants, "O demons, take this boy away from me. He deserves to be killed. Kill him as soon as possible." Ayam me bharturha soyam hitva swansurido damaha pritrivyahantu padyoyo vishnur dasan vad archati. This boy Prahlad is the killer of my brother, for he has given up his family to engage in the devotional service of the enemy, Lord Vishnu, like a menial servant. Vishnur vasadvaso kimnu kadishyati asmadjasha soridam dusyajam prityor aham ya panchahayana. Although Prahlad is only 5 years old, even at this young age, he has given up his affectionate relationship with his father and mother. Therefore, he is certainly untrustworthy. Indeed, he is not at all believable that he will behave well towards Vishnu. An interesting argument he makes there. Paropya patyam hitakrid yadoshadam swadeya jo pi matya vatsuto hita chinjat tadangam yad utat manohitam shesham shukam jivati yad vivarjanat. Although a medicinal herb being born in the forest does not belong to the same category as a man, if beneficial, it is kept very carefully. Similarly, if someone outside one's family is favorable, he should be given protection like a son. On the other hand, if a limb of one's body is poisoned by disease, it must be amputated so that the rest of the body may live happily. Similarly, even one's own son, if unfavorable, must be rejected, although born of one's body. Sarvar upayar hantavya samboja shayana sanai suridlinga dara shatrur muner dustam evendriyam. Just as uncontrolled senses are the enemies of all yogis engaged in advancing in spiritual life, this Prahlad, who appears to be a friend, is an enemy because I cannot control him. Therefore, this enemy, whether eating, sleeping, sitting, or sleeping, must be killed by all means. This is also a fascinating verse because Prahlad Maharaj had told his father that the only enemies are the uncontrolled senses. And here Hiranyakashipu is comparing his son to uncontrolled senses. Nairitaste samadhisha bhartravai shuklapanaya Tigma damstra karalasyas tamra smashtu shiro ruhaha nadanto ravam nadam chindi binditi vadinam ashinam chahanan suklai praradam sarvamarmashu. The demons, Rakshasas, the servants of Hiranyakashipu, thus began striking the tender parts of Prahlad Maharaj's body with their tridents. The demons had all fearful faces, sharp teeth, and reddish coppery beards and hair, and they appeared extremely threatening, making a tumultuous sound, shouting, "Chop him up! Pierce him!" They began striking Prahlad Maharaj, who sat silently meditating upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Pare Brahman Yadir Desha Bhagavat Yakilatmani Yuk Atman Yapala Asham Apunyashye Vasat Kriyaha. Even though a person who has no assets in pious activities performs some good deed, it will have no result. Thus the weapons of the demons had no tangible effects upon Prahlad Maharaj because he was a devotee undisturbed by material conditions and fully engaged in meditating upon and serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is unchangeable, who cannot be realized by the material senses, and who is the soul of the entire universe. Prayashe pahate tasmin daitendra parishankita Chakara tad vahopayam nirbandena Yudhishthira. My dear King Yudhishthira, when all the attempts of the demons to kill Prahlad Maharaj were futile, the king of the demons, Hiranyakashipu, being most fearful, began contriving other means to kill him. Diggarjar dandasu kendrar akichar avapatanai Mayabi sanirodascha gada danar aho janai hima vai vagni salishai parvata kramanair api na shashaka yadahantam apapam asuram sutam chintam dirga tamam praptas tat kartum na bhyapadyata. Hiranyakashipu could not kill his son by throwing him underneath the feet of big elephants, throwing him among huge, fearful snakes, employing destructive spells, that's like magic, hurling him from the top of a hill, conjuring up illusory tricks, administering poison, starving him, exposing him to severe cold, winds, fire, and water, or throwing heavy stones to crush him. When Hiranyakashipu found that he could not in any way harm Prahlad, who was completely sinless, he was in great anxiety about what to do next. So this must have all taken some time. I would assume this took at least several days. Esha me ba vasadukto vadyopayas tanirmitaha taistar drohar asad dharmair mukta sve naivate jasa. Hiranyakashipu thought, I have used many ill names in chastising this boy Prahlad and have devised many means of killing him. But despite all my endeavors, he could not be killed. Indeed, he saved himself by his own powers without being affected in the least by these treacherous and abominable actions. So he's thinking, okay, I got this really powerful person here and I've insulted him and I've tried to kill him in terrible ways. Vartmamano vidure vai balop yajada dir ayam na vishmar ati me narnyam shuna shepa iva prabhu. Although he is very near to me and is merely a child, he is situated in complete fearlessness. He resembles a dog's curved tail, which can never be straightened, because he never forgets my misbehavior and his connection with his master, Lord Vishnu. So many metaphors here. Aprameyanu bhavoyam akutaschid bayo mara Nunam etad virodhena mrityur me bhavita nava. I can see that this boy's strength is unlimited, for he has not feared any of my punishments. He appears immortal. Therefore, because of my enmity towards him, I shall die. Or maybe this will not take place. Iti chakchintaya kinchid mlala shriyam adomukam sanda marka vanushman sanda mark va oh, come on sanda marka Vaushan Asho Vivita Itiho Chatu. Thinking in this way, the king of the Daitas, morose and bereft of his bodily luster, remained silent with his face downward. Then Shanda and Amarka, the two sons of Sukracharya, spoke to him in secret. Jitam Twayai Kena Jagat Trayam Bruvor Virjimbana Trasta Samasta Jishnapam Natasyam Chintyam Tavanata Chakshwahe Navai Shishinam Guna Doshayo Padam. O Lord, we know that when you simply move your eyebrows, all the commanders of the various planets are most afraid. Without the help of any assistant, you have conquered all the three worlds. Therefore, we do not find any reason for you to be morose and full of anxiety. As for Prahlad, he is nothing but a child and cannot be a cause of anxiety. After all, his bad or good qualities have no value. So this demon tries to kill the Lord or the devotee, is unsuccessful, gets morose, and then his demon friends prop him up again and encourage him. Imam tu pashar vanunasya badva nidehi bito na palayate yata buddhishta pumso vayanasara sevaya yavad gurur bhargava agam ishyati. Until the return of our spiritual master Sukracharya, arrest this child with the ropes of Varuna so that he will not flee in fear. In any case, by the time he is somewhat grown up and has assimilated our instructions or served our spiritual master, he will change in his intelligence. Thus, there need be no cause for anxiety. Taheti guru puroktam anugyanena abravit dharmo hyasapadeshtavyo rajnamyo grihamedinam. After hearing these instructions of Shanda and Amarka, the sons of his spiritual master, Hiranyakashipu agreed and requested them to instruct Prahlad in that system of occupational duty which is followed by royal householder families. Dharmam arto chakamam cha nityartam cha nupur vashaha praradayo chayurajam prashritavan ataya cha. Thereafter, Shanda and Amarka systematically and unceasingly taught Prahlad Maharaj, who was very submissive and humble, about mundane religion, economic development, and sense gratification. Yatatri vargam guru bir atmane upashikshitam nasadu mene chachiksham dandwar amo pavarnitam. The teacher Shanda and Amarka instructed Prahlad Maharaj in the three kinds of material advancement called religion, economic development, and sense gratification. Prahlad, however, being situated above such instructions, did not like them. We've heard this before, right? This is a kind of a repeat. For such instructions are based on the duality of worldly affairs, which involve one a materialistic way of life marked by birth, death, old age, and disease. Yaracharya paravrito grihamedi karmasu vayashyar balakashtatra sopahuta kritakshanai. Now we have a new development happening. When the teachers went home to attend to their household affairs, the students of the same age as Prahlad Maharaj would call him to take the opportunity of leisure hours for play. Atatan shlakshnaya vacha pratyayuya mahabuddha Uvacha vidvams tan nishtam kripaya prahasan iva. Prahlad Maharaj, who was truly the supreme learned person, then addressed his class friends in very sweet language. Smiling, he began to teach them about the uselessness of the materialistic way of life. Being very kind to them, he instructed them as follows. Te tu tad goravat sarve twaktwa krida parich chadaha bala adjustita dio dwandwar ite hitai parjus pasataraj endra tan yasta ridayek shanaha tanhaha karuno maitro maha bhagavato suraha. Oh, my dear King Yudhisthira, all the children were very much affectionate and respectful to Prahlad Maharaj. And because of their tender age, they were not so polluted by the instructions and actions of their teachers, who were attached to condemned duality and bodily comfort. Thus the boys surrounded Prahlad Maharaj, giving up their playthings, and sat down to hear him. Their hearts and eyes being fixed upon him, they looked at him with great eagerness. Prahlad Maharaj, although born in a demon family, was an exalted devotee, and he desired their welfare. Thus he began instructing them about the futility of materialistic life. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 7th canto, 5th chapter of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, entitled Prahlad Maharaj, the saintly son of Hiranyakashipu. All right, so we have a lot of excitement in this chapter. So we have two main sections. We have 33 to 44, where Prahlad tries to kill Prahlad, and then 45 to 57, where Prahlad goes to school again. So, summary of this section is Hiranyakashipu goes from affection to anger to fear to depression to hope when Prahlad glorifies service to Vaishnavas. Hiranyakashipu tries to kill his son, is unsuccessful, and then again sends him to school. Prahlad still doesn't like his teacher's instruction, and this time goes beyond his own spiritual life and starts instructing his classmates, who are respectful and open. He's still just submissive to his teachers. All right, so we have a couple questions that are answered in this section. What is the mood of a devotee who gets harassed for his devotion? How does a devotee respond when people are criticizing, trying to kill that devotee because of his devotion? And what should we do when Krishna thwarts our plans? We have plans and Krishna's like, nope. So I'm going to find out the answers to those questions. Okay, the themes of this section, we have, of course, the Lord's protection, obviously, and also the very opposite reaction of the devotees and the materialists when things don't go their way. So things definitely don't go Prahlad's way, and they don't go Hiranyakashipu's way either, and their response to this is very different. Okay, text 32 is kind of really you could say it went with the last class, where Prahlad's describing the nature and destination of householders and the power of serving the Vaishnavas. So, Hiranyakashipu had asked him, where did you get this knowledge? And Prahlad's basically indicating that in this verse, that you have to smear one's body with the dust of the feet of pure devotees who are free from material contamination. A very similar statement is there in the discussion of Jad Bharat and Rahugana. All right, then 33 to 38, we have Hiranyakashipu ordering his servants to kill Prahlad, and he tries to justify his behavior, which of course is something that we all do when we're doing something we know is wrong. I would assume that all of us have done something in our life that we know is wrong. Maybe we've already done that today or yesterday, depending on what time of the day it is for you. Maybe it's so early that you haven't had time to do that today. But most of us do things that we know are wrong. So when we know they're wrong, we do them anyway. This very strange phenomena of why we do things that we know we shouldn't do, that we know will have bad consequences, is of course discussed in many places. And then when we do these things, we justify them. We make up reasons why it's not really so bad. And of course, everyone does this. Criminals whose actions are clearly wrong are really good at doing this. And the justifications they're all pretty much the same. It's that, I have a good reason for doing this, that I'm doing this for my own protection, to meet my own needs, to meet my own desires, and my own needs and my own desires are more important than whatever moral, ethical, whatever thing that we're violating. And if we're doing something that directly hurts somebody else, we try to justify it by saying, well, it's not really hurting them. If I steal this money from them, they have lots of money. They're not even going to notice it anyway. Or, well, they deserve to be hurt. They should be hurt. I'm doing society a favor, perhaps by hurting them or something like that. All right. Or, very, very extreme cases, to some very extreme, like psychopathic, sociopathic criminals, their justification is just, I enjoy hurting them. And they have no meaning. This sort of thing happens in war, where the enemy soldiers are called, chinks or gooks, or they're called something to dehumanize them, and often to de-living entity them, to make them like objects. Obviously some object, I have a pen. If I break the pen doesn't care. And if I'm enjoying breaking the pen, I can say, well, the pen it's not a living entity, it doesn't matter. Of course, devotees, we see it's Krishna's energy, so even then it matters. But anyway. All right, so text 33. So Hiranyakashipu now gets physically angry at Prahlad. So he's gone from verbal anger to now physical anger, and he throws his son off his lap. Then in 34, he orders the demons to kill Prahlad. In 35, he identifies Prahlad with Vishnu, the killer of his father. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments where he says, he is Vishnu. How is that? He worships Vishnu like a servant, although he is the son of a demon king. He is Vishnu because Vishnu gives a similar form to his servants. So he's thinking about how the residents of Vaikuntha look like Vishnu. Of course, Hiranyakashipu in his manifestation of Jai actually did look like Vishnu. Therefore, kill him. And Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, Prahlad Maharaj will be elevated to Swarupya liberation, and in that sense, he resembled Lord Vishnu. He's picking up from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Text 36. I find this argument fascinating. He probably won't be nice to Vishnu because he isn't nice to his parents. So, I can have him killed because he's the same as Vishnu, who killed my brother. It's killing him is the same as killing my enemy because he's the same as my enemy. And anyway, he really isn't very nice. He's disobeying his parents, and therefore, in general, he's just going to be disobedient. In general, he's not even a good devotee. I can kill him because he's not even going to be a good devotee. Then in 37, he says a diseased limb can be amputated so we can reject a family member. And this is another reference Hiranyakashipu is making to disease. That, and of course, it's actually true that you can amputate a diseased limb, but he's thinking that Prahlad is diseased. Then in 38, he makes another argument. He says he's an enemy because I can't control him. So this is the mentality of a ruler, right? If I have someone in my kingdom that I can't control, then they're an enemy. And, if you're in a position of authority over people, like you're a teacher in a school and you have a child who's just, he won't do what you say to do. So that's going to be a problem. You may have to remove that child from the classroom. Of course, Prahlad is very obedient and very respectful. Like we notice when he goes back to school, again, he's super respectful to his teachers. He's not disrespectful. And the only time that he speaks like this is when his father has asked him. Prahlad Maharaj has not volunteered this information on his own. He's not in his father's face on his own. But when his father asks him, then he gets in his father's face. So actually, he's perfectly willing externally to just go along with things. And still Hiranyakashipu isn't happy with that. And then he compares him to uncontrolled senses, which are the enemy of a yogi. Now, we remember that Hiranyakashipu performed severe austerities for 100 years of the demigods, and boy, did he control his senses. He really controlled his senses. But as I mentioned when we were going through the verses, it's interesting that Prahlad Maharaj tells his father, you know, your only enemy is your uncontrolled senses. So Hiranyakashipu's relationship to sense gratification is very interesting. He performed great austerities to control his senses with the aim of enjoying his senses later. So such a behavior is extremely common for materialistic people if they have any touch of Rajagun. Now, if people are completely in Tamagun, they won't do this. If people are deeply, deeply in Tamagun, they want immediate satisfaction of their senses and their mind, and they don't want to perform any austerities. Tamagun basically is like, I'm only going to do the right thing if it's easy, and I'm not going to be ambitious for anything that requires any difficulty. That's basically Tamagun. You know, if there's some difficulty involved, there's some austerity, there's some pain involved, then I'm just not going to do it. And of course, most people are not fully in Tamagun. If you're fully in Tamagun, you'd be just an object. You wouldn't even be alive. But Rajagun has this mentality that I'm willing to sacrifice and I'm willing to work hard for future enjoyment. And a Rajagun person is actually very proud of their austerities and their hard work for future enjoyment. They'll brag about it. I mean, you'll see sometimes even devotees who are influenced by Rajagun will talk like that. They'll talk about their austerities. They'll talk about how much how much have I sacrificed for the Hare Krishna movement, and how much have I sacrificed for my guru, and how many austerities have I done, and that's very Rajagun. But the idea of those austerities is that I want to get something for myself. That's the idea. So I'm going through some trouble now so that I will enjoy later. You know, it's not a mood of giving up sense gratification, actually, although people appear to be like that when they're doing the austerities. That appears to be. Okay, so the demons couldn't kill Prahlad. You know, go chop chindi bindi, chop him up and pierce him. Well, that didn't work. So then we have text 39 through 44, where Hiranyakashipu then starts broadening his methodology. And in 39 through 40, it says the demons are trying to kill Prahlad while Prahlad is completely peaceful. In 41, it stated that they could not harm Prahlad because Govinda was embracing him. And nor could the demons harm Govinda, who's all pervasive and even within the weapons of the demons. So this is the explanation why Prahlad's saved, because Govinda is hugging him. And then you can say, well, why couldn't they kill Govinda? I mean, this is later Hiranyakashipu's policy, you know, in the couple chapters from now, where he's like, okay, if Vishnu's protecting you, then I'm going to kill Vishnu. But the demons couldn't kill Govinda. You can't kill Govinda. He's not killable, and he's everywhere. And he's even in the weapons they're trying to use to kill him. So this is a very, very nice picture, very nice description here. And in 42, Hiranyakashipu goes from anger to fear. So first he's just angry, and he's going to try to kill Prahlad, having these demons kill Prahlad. And then he tries other methods. Then 43 to 44 is the list of the ways he tries to kill Prahlad. And he really, he tries pretty much everything. So he's tried just cutting him up. He tries cold, he tries fire, he tries storm, elephants and snakes and poison and all, throwing rocks at him, throwing him off cliffs, anything he can think, any way you can kill somebody, he tries that. And then none of them work. So then he gets even more scared and he gets in a lot of anxiety. So 45 to 47, Hiranyakashipu starts worrying that he's going to die, which is, again, fascinating because he was convinced he has this benediction from Brahma that he won't die. And it's this confidence that brings him to attack Nrsingadev when Nrsingadev appears. But here his confidence is kind of shaken. He's like, okay, here's this little boy, right? In 45, he's like, oh, right, I just insulted and tried to kill someone who's invulnerable. So I think in our own lives, sometimes we have somebody who we consider an enemy, there's some kind of impediment in our life, and we try to neutralize them in some way. That maybe we insult them, maybe we try to hurt them, maybe we tell bad things about them to other people. We try to do so many things to remove this person as an obstacle in our life. And when that doesn't work, then we get scared. We're like, oh boy, I've now created an enemy, a powerful enemy. Yeah, I'm sure this has happened to us, maybe when we were children or whatever, And it's funny, this happens in reverse later when Hiranyakashipu and Nrsingadev are fighting, and Nrsingadev lets Hiranyakashipu slip from his hand at a certain point. And then the demigods are watching in the clouds and they get worried because they're thinking, okay, Hiranyakashipu is going to know that we were in the clouds cheering for Nrsingadev. They were the cheerleading squad on the Nrsingadev side. And if Hiranyakashipu wins, then he's going to turn against us. So this is this, I've tried to hurt somebody and he was more powerful. Now, how could he respond to this? He could respond to this situation by surrendering to Prahlad, by changing his mentality toward Prahlad, by saying, well, maybe I have something to learn from you. But instead of respecting his son's superior power, and I just, again, think about this. Here's, this grown man who did 100 demigod years of austerity and he's ruling the universe and he's bested by his little kid. So that must have been pretty hard for the man's ego, but he could have said, oh, I offer my respects to you. I want to learn from you. I want to change. But instead of that, he just says he's like a dog's tail. He can't be straightened. It's first he's worried. Oh my goodness, I tried to insult this invulnerable person. This may boomerang back on me. And then he insults him some more. Comparing someone to a dog's tail is definitely insulting. I mean, if you want to say to somebody, you're so fixed, you're so determined, nothing can sway you from your purpose, that's a compliment. But if I say, you can never be changed just like a dog's tail can't be straightened. So you're looking at the same quality, but you're saying it in an insulting way. Okay, now we have kind of a repeat in 48. Oh yeah, in 47, Hiranyakashipu starts wondering whether or not he's going to die. He's like, maybe I'm going to die because of this. Maybe I won't die because of this. I don't know what's going to happen. But he starts wondering. He gets shaken. He's really his confidence level has really been shaken. Okay, 48 to 52, we have this repeat of Shanda and Amarka who just pacify Hiranyakashipu. And they're like, it's not important. He's just a kid. Like, just let it go. We'll work with him. So in 48 to 49, they secretly advise him. There's no commentary as to why it's secret. My best guess is that this whole situation was extremely humiliating for Hiranyakashipu. I mean, after all, a lot of other people knew that this happened. The demons who were sent to kill Prahlad, they all knew that it didn't work. And there's a book Satsuma Maharaj wrote from the point of view of one of the demons in Hiranyakashipu's court about this whole Leela. But we can certainly guess that, there was talk in the palace. Hey, Hiranyakashipu tried to kill his son and it didn't work. And, again, this is going to be very embarrassing for the enemy of Indra. So they talked to him privately. And now he's just very morose. And they flatter him. They say, you're powerful. You just move your eyebrows. Everybody's afraid of you. What are you worried about? Oh, greatly powerful one. Because Hiranyakashipu was thinking, oh, I'm not, my 5-year-old son is more powerful than me. My powers are useless. And they're like, no, no, no. You're great. You're wonderful. In like some sporting event. And the team drops the ball and the other team makes a goal and they're all morose. And then the cheerleading team is, you can do it. You can do it. You can. So like that, right? And then they also make the argument that you really don't know what kids are like until they grow up. You really, I mean, to some extent, of course, you can understand children's qualities when they're going to be adults from when they're children, but not completely. I mean, children do things just because they're children that the natural process of growing up, they stop. I'm just thinking how when I was like 2, my parents had a humidifier and it was probably a half a meter off the ground. It was about half a meter tall. And it had a hole in the middle and the water vapor came out of it. And I remember just being fascinated by this water vapor. I put my hand over it and have it get wet. And then I would throw things in the hole. I would throw toys and tissue paper and all kinds of things in the hole. And then I would see if the water vapor was still coming out. And I would keep throwing things until no more water vapor came out. And so my father would come and clean out the humidifier. And then he would talk to me very gently and say, now, you really shouldn't do this. This is not very good. And yes, Daddy. I remember this very, very clearly. I remember where the humidifier was in the house and everything. And then he'd walk away and I'd watch him walk away. And as soon as he'd walk away, I'd throw things in the humidifier again. So I did that when I was 2, but I'm not doing that now. Right? I mean, now that I'm an adult, I don't do things like that. And I'm sure, all of us as children, we did naughty things that we don't do anymore as adults. So Shanda and Amarka are saying, don't worry about it. Like he'll grow out of it. You can't take this seriously. When he's an adult, you can take it seriously. Right now, you can't take it seriously. Then in 50, they say, look, one alternative is you could arrest him. And our father's not here, but when he gets back, our father's, he's more powerful than we are, is the implication. And he can deal with it. Or you can just ignore the situation. He might change when he grows up. So, either way. And yeah, as I said, they've said this before. Isn't that the first time? Okay, in 51, in the purport, this is a very important, we talked about this before, but it's a very important point, the difference between a kshatriya who's demoniac and a devotee kshatriya. Prabhupada writes, there are 2 kinds of royal families, one whose members are simply attached to household life, and the other consisting of rajarshis, kings who govern with ruling power, but are as good as great saints. Prahlad Maharaj wanted to become a rajarshi. It wasn't that Prahlad Maharaj, right, didn't want to rule. Anyway, going on. Whereas Hiranyakashipu wanted him to become a king attached to sense gratification, griha medinam. Okay, so this statement of Srila Prabhupada, it answers our question of how Prahlad could rule well without accepting the mentality of his teachers, because we talked about that in other classes. Like, how are you going to rule well without getting into friends and enemies? You can not have that mentality and still rule well as a Rajarshi. And this statement from Prabhupada also shows that the teachers in Hiranyakashipu felt that Prahlad needed to be a materialist in order to be a good ruler. They didn't just want him to be a materialist for their own ego. I mean, that was there, but that's not the whole thing. They're preparing him to be a ruler. And so, they're thinking, if you don't think like this, you're going to be a lousy ruler. But there is another way to be a ruler in devotional service. Of course, the whole Bhagavad Gita is emphasizing this point. All right. So 52, and we have again a repeat. They teach Prahlad Dharma, Artha, and Kama. They don't teach him Moksha or Bhakti. And Prahlad is submissive. So this has happened before. They taught him these things, and he's just submissive. He's not arguing. He's not in their face. Internally, he doesn't accept it. But externally, he's just apparently going along with it. Aha. But now we have a new development. 53 to 57. So 53, Prahlad didn't like that his education was just materialistic. And in 54, there was a time each day when the children were unsupervised. So obviously there was no child protection organization going on. There are two reasons. First of all, because Hiranyakashipu is a child abuser, physical abuse and emotional. He's emotionally, psychologically, and physically abusing his son, and he's really physically abusing his son. He's trying to kill him. And there was no CPO in the universe to deal with it. Hiranyakashipu was running the universe. And also we see that the children had an unsupervised time every day. Now, in modern schools, that doesn't happen. So in modern schools in the world, there is a recess time, there is a play time, and the academic teachers might be taking a break in the break room or whatever, but there are some adults supervising the kids. The kids are not left unsupervised. But at this time in history, that was not the case, and the children were left completely unsupervised. And the teachers actually went back to their house. So we know that this school was close by to the palace. That was mentioned previously. Presumably, it's not clear, did the children stay overnight in the school or did they go back to their home to sleep? That's not clear. But here we have the teachers, the school's not in their house because they leaving the school and go home. So they're not only leaving the children unsupervised, they're actually going to another building of some kind. So the children are really there, and the teachers are not going to know what's going on there. And during that time, the children would play. Like in any school, there's recess, and the children say, Prahlad, let's play. And Prahlad said, I don't really want to. Now, in 55, Prahlad makes a big change. And he starts preaching to the other children. We notice that he never, again, I've said this over and over, but it bears repeating, he never instigated preaching to his parents or his teachers. He would answer their questions when asked about devotional service, but he never initiated that. And up until now, with the other children, he also kept his devotion to himself. And now he's become a lot bolder. And we'll talk about this after the break. How is it? What's made Prahlad bolder? What's given him the courage and the impetus that I'm going to preach to all my friends? So he goes beyond his own spiritual life, and he's instructing the other children. In 56, 57, we see kind of the quality of discipleship. So there's two qualities of the children that are mentioned. That first of all, they respect Prahlad. Part of it might be that he's the son of the king. Part of it is probably his own very saintly qualities. Prahlad Maharaj's qualities were described in previous chapters, but he's a really wonderful person. And so the children respect him. And also they have innocent receptivity. They hadn't become polluted by their teachers yet. They were all the same age. They're all also 5 years old. So they're hearing all this stuff from their teachers. I'm sure it's affecting them to some extent, but not deeply. They haven't deeply imbibed these principles. They're still very open and malleable. Okay, some interesting points is that Hiranyakashipu orders the demons to kill Prahlad, and he doesn't try to kill Prahlad himself. In fact, he never tries to kill Prahlad himself. So he tries to get the demons to kill Prahlad, and later he tries to kill the Lord instead of Prahlad. So that's just an interesting point to note. And with text 36, the point that Hiranyakashipu makes, that if Prahlad doesn't respect his parents, he certainly isn't going to respect Vishnu. Actually, Lakshmana makes this point to Ram when Bibhishan surrenders. He says, Bibhishan has left his brother Ravana, and he's left his brother during a crisis. A person like that can't be trusted. So, very interesting point. And as we kind of already mentioned, that Hiranyakashipu, when he's unsuccessful at killing Prahlad, he instead of respecting Prahlad, he gets fearful, he gets calculating, and he blames Prahlad for not dying. It's fascinating that in verse 47, that Hiranyakashipu is afraid of death, even though he has all these wounds. And in 55, Prabhupada talks again about the point that most people take to religion for some material blessings. Okay, we're going to take our break again until 8 o'clock Eastern time, until 6:30 Indian time, and then whatever time it is for you. Please take a real break. All the research shows, and Prabhupada's instructions are that we should have a break. Prabhupada says you go 50 to 60 minutes, and then you have a break. So all studies show that we learn better when we take a break. Take a real break, get up from your seat, move around, walk outside, get some fresh air, drink some water, something to rest the brain, and we'll see you again in 12 minutes. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Krishna. Okay, looks like we have a few. Okay, we're starting again. And I just went out. It's freezing here, and rain. We have snow and freezing rain. Ah. Okay. So, what's the answer to our question? What's the mood of a devotee who's being harassed for his devotion? And what do we do when things don't go our way? We joyfully surrender. That's what Prahlad does. He joyfully surrenders. All right. So I'd like you to look at text 30 to 32. 30 to 32. And so that's a little bit from the last class. So let's take a look at that. We have 30. Because of their uncontrolled senses, persons too addicted to materialistic life make progress towards hellish conditions, repeatedly chew what has already been chewed. Their inclinations toward Krishna are never aroused either by the instructions of others, by their own effort, or by a combination of both. And 31, persons who are strongly entrapped by the consciousness of enjoying material life and who have therefore accepted as their leader or guru a similar blind man attached to external sense objects cannot understand that the goal of life is to return home back to Godhead and engage in the service of Lord Vishnu. As blind men guided by another blind man miss the right path and fall into a ditch, materially attached men led by another materially attached man are bound by the ropes of fruit of labor, which are made of very strong cords, and they continue again and again in materialistic life, suffering the threefold miseries. And the verse that starts our class today, unless they smear upon their bodies the dust of the lotus feet of Vaishnava, completely freed from material contamination. Persons very much inclined towards materialistic life cannot be attached to the lotus feet of the Lord, who is glorified for his uncommon activities. Only by becoming Krishna conscious and taking shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord in this way can one be freed from material contamination. Okay. As fast as you can. I'd like you each to write in the chat at least 2 things that are required before you can understand spiritual knowledge based on these verses. Please write that in the chat. So based on these verses, find 2. There's more than 2. Find any 2 from these 3 verses that you need to do before you can understand spiritual life. No, you could put chats in bold. Okay. Okay, at least two things that you need to do to be able to understand the Lord from verses 30 to 32. That's okay. Excellent. Excellent. So there's more than two things in these verses, so pick any two. Just to note again, in verse 32, Prabhupada's criticizing, right? It's the same. We noticed this yesterday, I think, or the day before, where Prabhupada is talking about, I'll share this with you. Okay. So Prabhupada's talking about, one may ask why highly educated persons do not take to Krishna consciousness. And it said you have to take shelter of a guru, educators, scholars, and big political leaders, worshipped by millions of people. If they haven't actually, Prabhupada talks about the scientists. So again, as we talked about the other day, Prabhupada's thinking about, Gandhi, he's thinking about Dr. Radhakrishna. And then it's so sweet here where Prabhupada talks about how that you can just take shelter of the Supreme Lord, is all these wonderful verses like that, no matter how. Yes, very nice answers in the chat. Very nice answers. Thank you. And the solution is not just becoming a big politician or a big scholar, or that's not going to do it. Okay, I'd like you to look at that purport to 32. Look on your own. And look at the quotes that Prabhupada has there in that purport. Now, he quotes a lot of verses in that purport. He's quoting verses in the paragraphs themselves where, right, Nayam Atma Pravachanena Labdo, Namedia Nabahuna, he quotes Mahatmanastumam Partha Davim Prakriti Mashutam. Yasyati Bhaktir Bhagavatiya Kinchana, Sarvas Gunas Tatra Samasate Suraha. He quotes Yasya Deve Pura Bhaktir Yata Deve Taguru. He quotes Mam Evaisha Vinute Tena Labdas. So he's quoting a lot of verses to really make this point clear that what Prahlad Maharaj is saying, right? He's not just pulling it off the top of his head. Any thoughts as to why this is a point Prabhupada emphasizes all over the place? Any idea why Prabhupada emphasizes this so much, that we have to take shelter of Guru, we have to take shelter of devotees? Any thoughts? You can raise your hand or put in the chat. It's the first step in surrender. Okay. Yeah, I like that, Ekanta, that there's a widespread tendency of modern people to be independent, to think I don't need anybody. Okay, you're saying with Westerners, but the people Prabhupada who's criticizing here are Indians in the purport. So Dr. Radhakrishna and Gandhi are both Indians, they weren't Westerners. And so the tendency is there also in Indians. I don't think it's just a Western problem. And could be easily swayed by anyone. Actually, I mean, among Christians in the West, the Christians definitely have an idea of surrendering to Jesus. And as far as being easily swayed by anyone, I was hearing Prabhupada the other day say why he didn't call our society God consciousness. He said, because then you'll bring so many gods. And I thought that is definitely an Indian problem. That is not a Western problem. That Western people, if you say God, there's one God. it's a monotheistic culture. But Prabhupada says, if we said God consciousness, oh, Kartikeya is God. Okay, I like this, Mahalakshmi. It's easy to say I love Krishna or God. Unless one loves God, it's not clear how he really loves him. Yes. Yes. Okay. Yes. Without a teacher, we can't learn anything material or spiritual. So if I'm Prabhupada emphasizes this all over the place. He emphasizes it in verses like 32, where it's emphasized in the verse. But he also emphasizes it in verses where it's not emphasized in the verse. And he'll bring it in all the time. All right. So why did Hiranyakashipu try to kill his own son? Because this is the question that Yudhisthira asked that brings up this whole discussion. So why did he want to kill him? Anybody's thoughts? Again, you can raise your hand or put in the chat as you like. What was the necessity of killing his son? Why is he inclined like this? All right. Yeah, I think he is afraid. He especially is afraid after he fails. He was siding with the enemy. Yeah, but why do you have to kill him? Shri Radha Govinda?
Yeah, I was thinking to highlight how because of the insecurity that he had, the arrogance and all the authority that he had, it was under threat. So he couldn't overcome that ego of losing control. So he thought by getting rid of Prahlad, he'll regain his control.
Mm. Mm. Okay, I like Narada. He stands in the way of his delusion of being above everybody. Yes, someone else was going to speak. Yes.
Yes, Mataji. Another thing is he was on a rampage where he wanted to finish the devatas, all the brahmanas, all the yagnas that were going on, and then somehow weaken Vishnu and kill Vishnu. So because he was doing all those things, Prahlad was actually something that was against his mission. If his son is directly a devotee, I mean, not just supporting Brahminical culture, but he's beyond. So that's why he was dead against him.
Mm. Okay, Ratnam?
Mataji, any ruler or a politician nowadays, a demonic person, if anyone comes in the way of for his power, they will just annihilate him, Mataji. They doesn't worry about the family, friends. Even we see nowadays ruler also. So many rulers around the world. Their only motive is power. And if
Right.
anyone comes in their way, they will annihilate.
Right. We don't usually find that they kill them. I like Murari's thing that he's afraid that he'll be killed otherwise. He actually brings that point up, kind of at the end when he's unsuccessful. He said, maybe I'll be killed. Advaita Krishna Prabhu?
Hare Krishna, Mataji. I mean, when you reach that level of anger, beyond that is like you reach a state of complete unconsciousness, which is described as death-like under Tamishran. So he is completely unaware, in a sense, what he's doing.
I like that. I like that he's just lost it. Because it's not logical. I mean, Prahlad is not an immediate threat to him. He's very submissive and well-behaved. And he, up until this point, he's not preaching. So, he only says something when he's asked. And why is Hiranyakashipu so threatened by a little kid like that? But yeah, he's just, his ego is inflamed and he's just lost it. He's not even thinking clearly. Is like that. Yes. Oh, I like this from Radhika. He wants to show if someone wants to be a devotee in his king and what can be the result. That's quite thoughtful. To set an example that even if you're my son, if you want to be a devotee, you're going to be finished. I like that. And then, what are the reasons that Shanda and Amarka, what are the reasons that they give that, just like give up and send him back to school? What are their reasons?
Mataji, can you please repeat the question?
Yeah, Shanda and Amarka, they convince Hiranyakashipu, and they've convinced him before, they convince him again, that he should just stop trying to kill Prahlad and just send him back to school or arrest him. What are the reasons that they give? Yeah, he's just a child. Yes, our Father will come back. He'll deal with it. Maybe you can't deal with it. Maybe we can't deal with it, but Sukracharya can do it. Okay. So those are the main reasons. His character can change. There's still time. This is not fixed. He's still malleable, and Sukracharya can deal with it. Okay. So why do you all think this is a very interesting point about human psychology? Why does Prahlad Maharaj start preaching at this point in the story? He hasn't done it up till now. Why does he start? What is the impetus, the reason why Prahlad Maharaj now takes a much bigger step and starts preaching to the children? Advaita Krishna Prabhu.
If you go to the psychology of compassion, means that he's starting to feel the pain of the others.
Okay, then maybe he's growing in compassion.
Unless you feel the pain of others,
Okay.
how can you?
I think Mataji, now, having seen that, he has faced Hiranyakashipu, he has faced all these demons. They all try to kill him. So now there is no sense of fear left in him. He said, forget it, I don't care. Let me just do what I want.
I really believe that that's the answer. There's, I can't remember the name of the book, but it was a book I read some time ago. And it was describing people who experienced some horrific trauma that emboldened them. Like they were in a city that was being bombed, or their mother died when they were really young, or, some really traumatic thing. And instead of becoming traumatized, a lot of times when we go through some trauma, we withdraw. We become frightened. We're just like, oh my God, it might happen again. I better just protect myself. We get what they call post-traumatic stress disorder, where, where it's a person's they used to call it shell shock decades ago. You've been in a bombing, and then any loud noise, you just jump. But the other reaction to trauma is being emboldened, where you're like, if I went through that, I can go through anything. And people willing to do dangerous, difficult things because they just have this sense that I'm not only that I survive, but I can thrive. And so that's my own conclusion. Before this time, his father was angry, but at this point, he actually, he went through so many different ways of being killed, and he wasn't harmed by any of them. And he can see his father is now really afraid of him, which was not the case before. His father's actually afraid. And he's like, well, why? I don't need to worry about this. That his fearlessness is now absolute. And yes, some of you have made the point that he's particularly preaching to the children because they're receptive. He's not preaching to the teachers because that's a waste of time. We're not supposed to preach to the faithless. But he could see the children were innocent and receptive. But, that begs the question, why didn't he preach to the children before? He knew they were innocent and receptive before. And he's become emboldened. So I believe that this behavior of Prahlad can be very instructive for us it's doubtful that we're going to have someone try to kill us. What to speak of some family member try to kill us. I don't think that that's a statistically likely scenario for us. Maybe some of you have been abused by some family member. But whatever we go through in life, all of us go through difficult things in life, right? I was just trying to help the last few days one devotee who's 21 years old, and she's been in love with another devotee for the last few years, and they talked about getting married, and they even bought a house they were going to live in when they got married, and he just broke off the relationship. And she was completely traumatized. She was just crying and crying and crying and crying and crying. And, my whole life is ruined, and I'll never get married. I'll never have children. And she's 21 years old. And, everything in life is now finished. And, myself being a little older than 21, I was just like, yeah, you're going to go through this again in life. You're going to have other traumas in life. And at a certain point, she actually said that. She said, I was traumatized in childhood. I was abused as a child. And if I survive that, then I can survive this. And I'm like, yes, that's the fact. And other things will come up in the future that you can gain strength from that. That I actually have come out the other end. So Prahlad definitely gets emboldened here, which is quite interesting. All right, so Prahlad and Hiranyakashipu, they strongly disagree with each other. They speak strong words to each other, either direct insults or indirect insults. They each insult each other. Prahlad also insults his father. He says, you're like a blind man. You can't control your senses. And Hiranyakashipu's thinking, well, hey, look at all those austerities I did. You're going to go to hell. He's also insulting. So only Hiranyakashipu becomes angry and resorts to violence, whereas Prahlad remains tolerant. So he maintains an attitude of non-cooperation with his father, Hiranyakashipu. He doesn't change, but he's tolerant and humble. He always remains tolerant and humble. And Hiranyakashipu loses it so much. He loses it to the point that he's trying to kill his 5-year-old kid. So Krishna says in the 11th canto that even a sadhu will find it very difficult to reassemble his mind after being insulted. He says, by the words of uncivilized persons. And in my experience, in my own life and with others, I would say that this fact applies more when the person who insults you is a friend or a family member. So it's very difficult to resettle the mind. The mind becomes very disturbed. Like Vidura heard the insults of Duryodhana, like arrows going into the heart. Yeah. So how does Prahlad do this? How does he remain? He keeps his non-cooperative mood, but he remains peaceful and tolerant. He doesn't lose it. How does he do this? Any thoughts? Might be a nice thing to know. Oh, I like this, Pulastamuni. He has no sense of friends and enemies. Wow. Wow. He doesn't see his father as an enemy. Amazing. He feels Krishna's shelter. Yeah. His senses are under control. Confidence that Krishna's protecting. I like this from Prema Manjari. He's so absorbed in the Lord that such things do not touch him. I like that also. I mean, you can see that can be true even materially. If I'm really absorbed in something, especially something pleasant, I'm not going to be bothered by other people. If somebody just said, hey, stop by my office, I'm going to give you $1 million. And as I'm walking down the street to pick up my $1 million, somebody insults me, I'm not going to care. I'm just not going to care. if you just got to notice that your cancer's gone away, coming out of the hospital, and, oh, my cancer's gone, and somebody says, get out of my way, you stupid idiot. It's not going to bother you. It just, so yeah, to be absorbed in Krishna. Radha Govinda sees his father's evilness as a disease. Now that's interesting because his father sees him as a disease. So this is nice because we would like to be like that. We'd like to be unaffected. From what Krishna says, I don't think it's possible for there to be no physiological effect. But we can be detached even from the physiological effect and be absorbed in Krishna, be absorbed in something else, and know that no one is my enemy. No one can kill him without the sanction of the Lord. Yes. Yes, well, the one is stable and one is unstable, but I was kind of asking, that's kind of a restatement of the question. I was kind of asking why. All right. So we talked about when we were going through the verse how Hiranyakashipu is trying to justify his bad behavior. So this is something I would like you not to share. This is something I'd like you to do for yourself. I want to take 2 minutes right now. Do not write this in the chat. Do not raise your hand because I want this to be completely, fully, totally honest. I will not ask you to share this with anyone else. I'm going to take 2 minutes. I'd like you to choose, be very honest, some bad behavior that you have done at some point in your life and how you tried to justify that or rationalize that. So write that down, please, just for yourself. Do not share this. All right. Interesting, isn't it? How we try to justify to ourselves. I really need this. It's not so important. Nobody's going to care. I don't have any time. This person was bad anyway. They deserved it. So many things. So this is, we're really expert at rationalizing the things that we know are wrong for ourselves or others. All right. So Hiranyakashipu says you can reject a family member or someone close to you, just like you can cut off a diseased limb. Now we have examples in Shastra of devotees who rejected a non-devotee family member or someone close to them. Actually, Prabhupada sometimes gives this list. Anybody want to think of who that would be? In one sense, Prahlad's rejecting his father. He just calls him king of the demons, best of the demons. He doesn't call him my dear father. Any other examples? You can raise your hand. Write in the chat, raise your hand, whatever you're more comfortable with. Some examples. Bhisham rejecting Ravana. Okay, some more examples. Ram rejecting Sita. Oh, that's heart-wrenching. Sati rejecting Daksha. Oh, wow, I like that. I never thought of that one before. Bali rejecting Sukracharya. Kamsa rejecting his sister. Yeah, but Mahalakshmi, that wasn't my question. My question was devotees rejecting someone who's not a devotee, not another demon. Dasarath rejecting Kaikeyi. Oh, I like that. Never thought of that before either. Vidura rejecting Dhritarashtra. Gopis rejecting their relatives. Excellent. Bharat rejecting Kaikeyi. Excellent. Prabhupada gives the example of Bharat. Any other examples? There are some more. Prabhupada rejecting his godbrothers. Well, at least some of them, yeah. There were some godbrothers he didn't reject, but some of his godbrothers, yeah. Mahalakshmi, you're picking people who are not devotees. You picked Kamsa and Karna. I'm looking for devotees. Chaitanya rejecting the impersonalists. Okay, but they weren't family or friends. Radharani rejecting Jatila. Oh, that's funny. Chaitanya rejecting Junior Haridas. Yeah, okay. Sarvabhauma rejecting his son-in-law. Excellent. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu rejecting Kala Krishnadas. Ooh, that's also very heart-wrenching. Yeah. Sarvabhauma with Amoga. ISKCON devotees rejecting their parents who were not supportive. Yeah, there you go. Okay, I did ask for something in Shastra, but we'll take that. Some devotee, but Mahaprabhu rejecting Mukunda. Of course, later on he accepted him. Kunti rejecting Karna. Of course, that's very complex. It's a very, very complex. Prabhupada rejecting his wife. Okay, wow. Something I hadn't thought of. No, Mayavadis are not families and friends. Bhisma rejecting of Ambai? Okay, but she wasn't really a family or friend. She wasn't someone that he was attached to and cared about. Talking about where there's, wives of the Brahmanas leaving their husbands. We have, what's his name? King Anga, who rejects his son, Vena. All right, Ganga rejecting her sons. Well, not really, because she was really just doing them a favor. That was just superficial. Wasn't wives of Kali are rejecting Kali. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. And only once he actually surrenders do they accept him again. Parsara rejecting Bhishma. Well, that's kind of interesting. Yeah, of course, he does take him back again. Kunti rejecting her family to be with Lord Krishna. Yes, she does. She says, sever the tie of affection. Yeah, but Mahalakshmi, you're giving the wrong examples. Jamuna rejecting Balaram, but that was a bad thing. We're talking about a good thing, where devotees reject someone for a good reason. Jamuna was in Maya. Jad Bar rejecting his father and brothers. Excellent, excellent. Yes, yes. Brahaspati rejected Indra. Oh, such a nice example. All right, let's go on. Just thought of so many that I hadn't. I love it when my students think of things that I hadn't thought of. Okay, so we talked about how Prahlad Maharaj did not get traumatized. In fact, he became emboldened. He had the opposite result. So instead of being traumatized, he became more enthused. However, we do see that sometimes devotees get traumatized. Maybe ourselves, maybe we've been through something that's traumatized us. Maybe we know other people who've been through things that have traumatized them. We don't see that always people are just detached or emboldened. So can you think of any other examples in Shastra of a devotee who went through something traumatic and was psychologically affected by that? Dhruva. Okay, but Dhruva was psychologically affected before he became a devotee. So it doesn't count. Sati. Yeah. She's definitely psychologically affected by her father's rejection. Draupadi is definitely psychologically affected by her being dishonored and by her husband's being dishonored. Not only the dishonoring of herself, but the dishonoring of her. Yeah, I already said you can't count Dhruva because he wasn't a devotee. I'm asking you about devotees. Dhruva was not affected. You could say he was very affected by the Yakshas killing his brother. Arjuna, okay. Actually, it's interesting. Just this morning, I was hearing this class where someone asked if Arjuna really heard Krishna's instructions, why was he affected by Abhimanyu being killed? And Prabhupada said, he said that was temporary. It was natural, and he never stopped following Krishna's instructions. Yudhisthira after the battle was the main one I was thinking of. That Yudhisthira after the battle was so grievously affected. I mean, he was affected for a long time, and even Krishna couldn't pacify him. Subhadra actually wasn't very affected. Gaja, Gajendra? What do you mean by Gaja? Karna is not a devotee. Kunti was, yeah, she was really affected by having to give up Karna. It was something that affected her whole life, her abandonment of Karna. Was Sita traumatized? I don't know. I mean, one could argue perhaps that that's why she went into the earth. Devaki? Yeah, she was. I mean, of course, what Devaki did was she used that to become more attached to Krishna. I don't know about Subhadra. It says that actually she wasn't traumatized by the killing of Abhimanyu, that her love for Krishna was not affected. Yeah, Sati Daksha, we already said that. Okay. Okay, then we looked at psychologically. Now let's look at physically. So Prahlad wasn't physically harmed at all. And he not only was he not killed, he wasn't even physically harmed. He didn't even get like cuts and scratches. And it's explained that he was protected by the Lord. And there's a similar thing happened with Haridas Thakur, that he's being beaten in all these villages in their town square to be made an example of, right? The Mohammedan ruler wants to make an example, so he tells his guard, take him through 23 villages, the marketplaces, and beat him. And he wasn't affected. Very similar, it said that Lord Chaitanya later showed that he had taken the beatings. However, do we have any examples in the scripture of where devotees are physically harmed? Well, where you say Prahlad? Prahlad is the example of someone who wasn't. The Pandavas, I don't know of any example where we were physically harmed. Bhaktivinoda, yeah, he got sick. He got a fever. Yeah. Lord Nityananda. Yes, Sri Pirata, I don't know why you're giving the example of Prahlad. Prahlad didn't get harmed. We're asking for people who did. Nityananda, yes. Leela Madhuri Lalita, you must be from South India, since you stuck an H in there. Gajendra? Yeah, of course, we could make the argument that he wasn't yet a pure devotee. He was a neophyte at that time. Mirabai. I don't know if Mirabai, I mean, you could say she died. She was given poison and she died. So you might say that. Although her dying was miraculous. But yeah, you could make that argument. Abhimanyu. Parikit in the womb. Was Parikit harmed in the womb? I mean, he did feel the burning of the Brahmastra until Krishna protected him. Vitrasura. Oh, what a nice example, Nilamani. I like that. Vitrasura. Yeah. He was a great devotee. He got his arms cut off and then he died. Yes. Jatayu is another example. One of my favorite is Jatayu. That Ravana kicked Babishan. Yeah, but did Babishan get hurt? I mean, we don't really know. Did he get a bruise or something? We don't know. Advaita beaten by Mahaprabhu for preaching Mayavad philosophy. That's complete Rasika stuff. And I don't know if Advaita Acharya got any bruises. I don't, See, Nityananda actually got a gash in his head that was bleeding. And I don't know of anything in that story of Advaita Acharya where there was any physical injury. I'm asking about physical injury or death. Not somebody who got attacked because Prahlad got attacked, but Prahlad didn't have any injuries. So I'm sure you can all figure out why I'm asking these questions, right? Because we might think, well, if I become a devotee, I'm not going to get psychologically or physiologically harmed. Russian devotees in the beginning, yes, although I did ask for example some Shastra. Vasudev Vipra, where he had leprosy. So we might think that, if I'm a devotee, Bhishma, oh my goodness. Yes, definitely. We might think, well, I'm a devotee, and therefore I'm invulnerable externally, that nobody can physically harm me or nobody can psychologically harm me. And we may take it that if somebody can physically hurt me, if somebody can attack me and give me bruises or broken bones or something, and if I go through some trauma and I'm psychologically affected, that means I'm somehow less of a devotee, and the reason that Prahlad's unaffected is that he's such a great devotee, and it's a measure of my devotion. But that's not true. We obviously find the Pandavas suffered according to Bhishma. Yeah, but it's difficult to tell whether he was talking about external or they were put in difficult situations. Prahlad's definitely put in difficult situations. I don't know if there's any account of them suffering physical injury. Definitely Yudhisthira is psychologically affected by the battle. Jayapataka Swami, yes. I was asking for Shastric examples. There's always a danger when we go to modern contemporary examples, all different kinds of dangers with that. Yeah. So sometimes even if we're at the level of Prahlad Maharaj, we could still get affected psychologically or physically. There's not, and this is the surrender of the devotee. Sampade vipane jivane madane. If you want to kill me, it's okay. If you want to hurt me, it's okay. And this is a surrender of body, mind, and soul, surrendering even the mind. It's not a contract. Like later when Nrsingadev says to Prahlad, what do you want? He says, I'm not a merchant. This is not a contract. Well, I'm going to surrender to you, Lord. I'm going to see you, Lord, as my protector. And you have to protect me the way I want to be protected. It's not like that. There's not that kind of a guarantee. Anybody have any ideas as to why Hiranyakashipu tried so many different methods? And again, you can either raise your hand or write, whatever you. Why wasn't it just like, yes, okay, excellent. Why wasn't he just, the demons tried to kill him and cutting him up and it didn't work? Why didn't he stop there to show off? Desperation. I think there was some desperation. He couldn't believe it. He's just going to keep trying. Yeah. Yeah. So he's desperate. And he just like, there must be some way. He hoped the next method would work. I mean, he might think, well, maybe Prahlad has some benediction. He has no faith in the Lord on his own effort. Maybe he didn't want the methods to work. Now that's interesting. A psychological analysis of Hiranyakashipu here. Okay. Yeah, maybe he thought, well, maybe Prahlad's immune to being cut, but I just got to find the thing that doesn't interrupt his benediction. Why do you think Hiranyakashipu's afraid? Oh, he's trying to display his full range of his demoniac mentality. Yeah, like he wanted to show off. Why do you think Hiranyakashipu starts being afraid that he's going to die? He's got all these boons. Oh, I like this. Gokulavasini tried all earth, air, fire, water. Cool. Why is Hiranyakashipu all of a sudden afraid that he's going to die? Where'd that come from?
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Probably he see that his son probably is also immortal. So one immortal, maybe he's more immortal than he is. So in the future he can kill him,
Oh, okay.
avenge him probably.
Yeah. Okay. Are the other thoughts of why Hiranyakashipu is suddenly actually fearing his own death, although he has all these boons? Super soul. Oh. Okay. Maybe it was a super soul. Maybe it was like, hey. Any other thoughts? He starts running out of ways to kill Prahlad. Oh, Sri Radha Govinda, this is deep. Because he was denying his death, and that was his goal, and he's exposed. So it's, yeah, his fear is surfaced here. But he had asked for this boon that I would have no rival. Okay. So we have Hiranyakashipu. He tries to kill Prahlad in so many ways, and he fails. And then his friends go, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. Prahlad did not fall in the categories of those entities who could have killed him. Yeah, because he was created by Lord Brahma, and he was so interesting. So anyway, the teachers come and say, that's okay, that's okay. You know, you're strong, you're powerful, you can go on. Any other examples in Shastra of demons who were defeated and then their demon friends encourage them? I can think of two offhand. Kamsa, yes. When Durga appears in the prison, and then he apologizes, and then the next day his demon friends say, go on, go. Oh, Duryodhan. Yeah, after he's defeated by the Gandharvas or whoever they were. And he was ready to die. Jarasandhar. Did he have demons who encouraged him? Oh, yes, he did. Ravana, yeah. Jayadrath. Ah. Okay. So watch who your friends are, right? These guys had bad friends. Imagine if Hiranyakashipu had good friends. So if his good friends could come to him and go, hey, buddy, wake up. Of course, it happened with Ravana, where Bibhishan says to him, wake up. And he says, I'm going to kill you, giving me the wrong advice. Shishupal. Yeah. When Krishna kidnaps Rukmini and his friends say, we're going to go get him. Dushashana, yeah, he's defeated, and so he's encouraged. My dear friend, we got to find the right friends, you know? We've got to find friends who will tell us honestly, you're messing up. Okay, in the purport to 53, Prabhupada says those interested in spiritual life should follow Prahlad Maharaj in rejecting the education of religion, economic development, and sense gratification. One should be interested in spiritual education. What does this mean practically for us and for our children? And I can grab that quote if you want, put it in the chat. Okay, I'm not so much concerned about being interested in spiritual education, that's obvious. But I'm interested in what does it mean to reject the education of religion, economic development, and sense gratification? What does that mean practically for us and for our children? Yes, Sri Radha Govinda.
I mean, if somebody is a businessman, he doesn't really need to get an MBA. He can just go out on the street and sell. So if somebody has a nature, then it doesn't require so much material education in certain areas. So we don't have to overemphasize the training on a material level. That's my understanding.
Anybody else?
A certain level of education is required to sustain in the material world. Unless you're going to stay as a brahmachari, even for a brahmachari, you need some education to understand scriptures. One who are not educated, they can understand scriptures and talk intelligently, articulate things. Secondly, even when you are going to next level of grahastha ashram and you have to make a livelihood, you require material education, economics, all of these things you need to sustain. So, and even when you are preaching, it has been seen that ones who are well educated materially, they actually tend to be good preachers. So, but what it is that we don't want to make up a goal. My goal is economic development. My goal is, how to gratify senses. So that is what I think we should not get into.
Mm. Mm.
But some things are required. Minimum a certain level is required to advance and apply Krishna consciousness.
It's interesting you talked about brahmachari. So this is from a lecture that Srila Prabhupada was giving about the brahmachari ashram, about Gurukula and about the brahmachari ashram. And so what does he say here? He says, not that because he has become Krishna conscious and Vaishnava is he unable to do anything of the material world. No, one who is Krishna conscious, he is conscious of everything and he knows how to deal with him. That is called daksha. Not that because I become Krishna conscious, I have no knowledge in other things. No, you must have, if not complete, to know something of everything. That is intelligence, to know something of everything and to know everything of something. That is wanted. You may be expert at devotee. You know everything of devotional service, but you should not be callous. You know something of everything. That is called daksha. And this again was his instructions for the brahmachari ashram. But I like your point, not making those things the goal of our life. So rejecting means you're aware of what material education is because you've been able to study it. Therefore, despite being accustomed with the knowledge, you do not make it your reason to live. Okay. Like that. So this, reminds us, of course, of the Ishopanishad that one has to know both. Yes, but not to make it the goal of life. And this ties into Prabhupada's purport in 51, where he distinguishes between a materialistic kshatriya and a devotee. So, often again, we're thinking, well, we don't want material knowledge. We're just going to give up our duties. We're going to walk away from everything. But it's rather to use everything in service. Okay, one more thing. So I'm going to put something else here in the chat. So here Prabhupada says, this is from the purport to text 57, in our Krishna consciousness movement, the Gurukula plays an extremely important part in our activities because right from childhood, the boys at the Gurukula are instructed about Krishna consciousness. Thus, they become steady within the cores of their hearts, and there's very little possibility that they will be conquered by the modes of material nature when they are older. Some thoughts about how to apply this instruction or this statement.
The Gurukul provides a very strong foundation to practice Krishna consciousness over the course of his or her life. Otherwise, when you are in regular school system, public school system or private, whatever that is, there is no concept at all about sense control, about being aligning your lifestyle in a certain way, and on and on. So I think Gurukula is very important. But one thing I see is that our Gurukulis, many of them are suffering, as far as material condition is concerned in the society, kind of lagging behind. So certainly some of this has to be somehow corrected. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we have 2 minutes. Is there anything else anybody would like to bring up?
I've noticed that If mothers are Krishna conscious, the children generally follow.
It's interesting that you say that. One of the things I've noticed in the Bhagavatam is if there's a marriage of mixed varnas, that the child is generally identified with the mother's varna rather than the father's. And it's just something that's fascinated me. I don't know if there's any exception to that.
It's also some statement like this Japataka Maharaj personally made to me. And we discussed it for half an hour with him some 20 years ago. And we were discussing some families, and he was constantly asking, is a mother devotee? Is a mother devotee? And I said, why do you ask that? He said, because there's a much better chance devotees becoming Krishna conscious if the mother is a devotee.
Interesting.
And I looked in I kind of peruse, and I see in Krishna conscious communities, and I see that's a reality.
That's interesting. I mean, at the same time, there's empirical research that children become more materially messed up if they don't have a father than if they don't have a mother. So children are much more likely to grow up and become criminals or sexually loose or things like that if they don't have a father. An absent father is much more a predictor of those things than absent mother. So that's also quite interesting. And I mean, of course, I'm sure there's a lot of individual variations on this sort of thing, but a very interesting observation. All right. Thank you very much. Any mistakes here, please ignore them. They are my responsibility. Anything good here is from Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas and not from me. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.